So let's begin, first of all, with what we mean by Catholic identities. I am Gerald A. Arbuckle. That is my legal identity. But I am also a New Zealander and an Australian. I'm a New Zealander when the All Blacks are beating the Wallabies. And I am sometimes an Australian when the cricketers are winning here. It's been increasingly a rare event, it seems. Now, I'm mentioning this because I have many identities. And Catholic identity is not the right terminology, I believe, because there are Catholic identities. And the context will determine what identity we choose at a particular time and place. If you take page 2 of your papers, you will see there a diagram which I have worked out, and I've identified 4 foundations or pillars of identities. And at the basis of those 4 pillars, there are many Catholic identities. And the context indicates to us today, as the bishop said this morning, to remind us that the pillar that colors every other pillar is the healing mission of Jesus Christ. The emphasis on the biblical aspect of Catholic identities. So that leads me to a key point. What do we mean by holistic healing? How did Jesus heal holistically? On page 3 of your papers, you will see what for me is the most delightful healing incident in the life of Jesus Christ. It's the Bartimaeus story. Here is Bartimaeus. He is a blind beggar. He has a disease of the eyes that automatically excludes him from all human communication, even with his family. Therefore, significantly, Mark puts Bartimaeus on the roadside. That symbolizes he's out of society. He has no social and personal identity. And here's Jesus passing by. And he sees Bartimaeus, and Bartimaeus sees him. Not through the eyes, but through the communication of the heart. And he cries out to Jesus, "Heal me, Jesus, Son of David, heal me." And the crowd scoff. They've had many, many workshops on culture, following the Master. But they have not learnt that culture can be an object to change. And they revert to the old system of culture. This person is to be avoided. He is dangerous. He is impure. They tell Bartimaeus to shut up. But Jesus hears the cry, and he says, "Come forward." And in that one call to Bartimaeus, we see the heart of holistic healing. Because by calling Bartimaeus onto the road, Jesus is destroying the social determinants of his poverty and isolation. Now, Jesus is saying to those people, those cultural barriers should not be there. His economic deprivation should not be there. And then Bartimaeus, inspired heart to heart from his relationship to Jesus Christ, moves with speed in the darkness of his eyes, of his blindness. He moves and runs towards Jesus. So great is his trust in the healer. And Jesus says, "I heal you." And notice at the end of the story, Bartimaeus gets onto the road again. Holistic healing is not just healing of the body and the soul, it's healing of the circumstances that lead to deprivation. And that's why you must always remember the context in which the healing or the person is sick or dying or rejected. Now that leads me to a series of lessons. And I want to comment on what's been happening these last wonderful 2 days. My first lesson I offer you is this, which you have already stated. Jesus Christ is the primary founder of our health systems, not Catherine Macaulay, not John of God, not Mary Aikenhead or Mother Cabrini. The primary foundation is Jesus Christ. Now, what does that say to you as an anthropologist? Whoa. I'll give you a case study, and I'll cover certain details to avoid recognizing who I'm talking about. It's an incident, a case study in the United States that I was called to. 8 congregations or religious congregations had decided to join together their separate health systems. They had a great gathering together. They had a wonderful mission statement framed of how they were to be collaborative and interactive and entering into dialogue. Well, after a few years, something began to happen. These systems had been in competition for over 100 years. And what happened? Anthropologists called it lurky-lurkies began to emerge. Deep from within the culture. We can't trust this other group. We remember what they did 90 years ago. And they're doing it again. I was called in from Sydney to them in the United States. The system was literally on the verge of complete disintegration. Out the window went the healing mission of Jesus Christ, because they weren't even healing themselves. Now, ladies and gentlemen, culture, by definition, is resistance to change. You can make the grandest mission statements you like. You can declare fantastic visions of what you're going to do out of this conference. But the reality is, strategies, when they hit culture, culture wins. And that means, if you're going to have Jesus Christ as the primary founding story, you have to let go of a lot of power and a lot of cultural support systems. I envisage here, as Tessa mentioned yesterday, 10 years from now, people will be looking different from different ethnic groups. And I would anticipate, I'll be dead, so I won't be proved right or wrong in 10 years' time. I anticipated all these structures we've been talking about and amalgamations, they will be very different in 10 years' time. There'll be amalgamations of rivals beyond imagination. The amalgamation of all kinds of situations which we do not even envisage. But they will not work unless the cultures are addressed. And that means addressing the issue of letting go. Congregations have to learn themselves to let go. Cultures of systems have got to learn to let go. One of the words being used so often here this last few days, 2 days, is collaboration. Fine, wonderful. But collaboration means breaking down cultural barriers. Remember that the axiom I gave, culture, by definition, anthropologically, is resistance to change. Culture is about the status quo. When strategies relate to culture, culture ultimately wins. My second lesson to you. Anthropologically, vibrant cultures of organizations exist because there are 3 qualities or elements to be seen there. Number 1, a founding story. Number 2, symbols of identity. Number 3, ongoing process whereby the founding story is being retold and retold in rapidly changing circumstances. Now, the primary founding story of any kind of amalgamation or merger in healthcare systems is ultimately the founding, the Jesus Christ as the healing mission as a healing missioner. I've just been working for the last few years on observing the National Health Service of England as a case study, and it's worth you knowing about it. It was founded, I discovered wonderfully well, in an Oxford library. I discovered that it was actually founded on the Good Samaritan story in 1948. But 1st of April this year, those values of the Good Samaritan story are now being thrown out the window, and the coalition government is leading the market economy into healthcare at the national level. What has happened? Because the founding story has not been retold and retold, it has drifted into nothingness. And that's the danger. You cannot sit on your laurels. You cannot assume because you've got a founding story, you know Jesus Christ, all love it, we have a mission statement. It does not automatically continue. I've seen the situation develop with certain institutions in the United States, some famous institutions, in fact, where the founding story has disintegrated and drifted beyond retrieval. My third lesson is this. The first obligation of trustees, boards, senior and middle management in governance is to ensure that the appropriate formation programs are developed for all, based on the compassionate healer, Jesus Christ. Now, I want to underline that word all, because I've not heard it these last 2 days. We've been speaking about formation of trustees, of executives, of boards. Fine, we need that. But we have thousands of people out there, thousands of people to whom we have an obligation to develop formation systems that relate to their situation and their needs. And previous systems of formation, orientation programs are insufficient for the realities we now face. They must be ongoing, and we must be highly experimental how we develop these formation programs. I'm in admiration of mission leaders, but they have got a job that is almost beyond them without your help. New systems, new methods of involving people in the healing mission of Jesus Christ have yet to be developed, tested, and constantly evaluated. That leads me to the next lesson. There must be locally based formation programs, but given our limited resources in Australia, we need far more nationally based and evaluated programs. I know there are some already existing, but are you committing yourselves to these programs? Have you really sincerely committed yourself to what we already exist? I would anticipate we'll have to develop new and other forms, a diversity of processes at the national level. Because simply no one system has the expertise and professional know-how available to do this. This has to be a national program. Locally, I said we need programs based on the local scene. Yes, I don't deny that. But we're now moving to a situation where they are insufficient of themselves. Now comes another interesting lesson. Somebody mentioned the word grief this morning. I felt like cheering you. Every change in every culture leads to some form of loss. And every loss leads to some sort of grief. Whether you accept the change or not, you experience a degree of grief. And unless those griefs can be articulated, they can sap the energy of every organization. Maria Cunningham in 1993, I forget what year it was. Wonderful. St. Vincent was to be moved out to Cogra somewhere. and brilliant insights. He said, Gerry, come in and do something. Do something. I said, this is a wonderful opportunity, Maria. There's a wonderful opportunity. Here we can use the biblical base of grieving, not just Kubler-Ross. We have a biblical base of grieving already set up for us in the Old Testament. So over a whole 2 or 3 weeks, I just sat in the corridors or moved around wherever people wanted to talk about fear of loss or what St. Vincent would mean to them. They talked and talked. And once it was talked through, they were then open to newness. But as long as they cannot talk about their losses, it saps the energy. And healthcare, every healthcare system, secular or Catholic, is going through this enormous change process. Change after change after change, and people get absolutely exhausted. And from that can come very, very dysfunctional behavior. So with using the New Testament, we can develop grieving processes regularly to allow people to express how they feel. You may not like to hear what they say, but those sayings are really symptoms of grieving. Now we come to a lesson that may not sound rather good to you. Within 5 years or less, I anticipate we may well lose our Catholic ethos if we fail to take collaborative action now in establishing the formation programs that I have been speaking about. If not, our facilities will remain Catholic in name only. And there are 2 reasons for my cautionary warning. First, our present key staff members were directly in contact with the dedicated presence of sisters and brothers in our institutions. Within 5 years or less, this new generation of leaders will have no personal memory of this presence. This will be anthropologically a very dangerous stage. Unless we can develop a pool of well-formed people to lead the sector in the years ahead. I know the sector is shrinking from the point of view of reservoir of people. That's the reality. And that adds to the urgency to develop this pool of people who are well-formed in theology, in scripture, in other areas relating to Catholic identity. Just for one simple example. You may think theology is not necessarily important at any depth. But I tell you that any CEO, any board that does not understand the notion of church theologically, as is expressed by the bishop and by Vatican II, if they do not know that and interiorize it, then they can make decisions that are quite contrary to the healing mission of Jesus Christ. Just one simple example, and I could give examples from the United States where that has occurred. Goodwill is not enough. Knowledge is crucial. Secondly, there's always the danger, and the word has been used several times already, and I've referred to it indirectly also. There's always a danger that tribalism may prevent us from acting collaboratively. I come back again to the notion of culture. The past never dies until you allow it to die. It carries itself around in the collective consciousness. It's there. And unless we're prepared over and over again to name what is holding us back culturally, from collaboration, that consciousness of the past will hold us back and destroy our best plans. Mediocrity is no way to ensure the continuation of the founding story of Jesus Christ. You may say you haven't got these people. There are people in this room that I know of who have these gifts of what I call refounding. They are creative people. They're in touch spiritually and theologically with the heart of the Catholic mission. But one of the problems is if trustees and boards are not of the mind we're talking about, there will be anthropologically assassinated. We must allow these people to come and to emerge and to encourage them. You are not like what they are saying necessarily. You may have peace now, but you're dead in the future. Martin mentioned, by way of conclusion, that in this book on crafting Catholic identity, I began by saying we have three options. Nostalgia. Oh. That is, we live in the glorious achievements of the past, but history shows that the more rigid the defense of an untenable position, the more catastrophic the smash when it does come. Museums are wonderful things to have, but put them where they're not going to interfere with the process of change, please. I always find, in a little comment, that religious congregations, one of the signs of death, we seem to revitalize our archives and our museums. Option number 2, do nothing. This is very much an easy option. We just mindlessly drift into essentially secular institutions, still bearing the insignia and symbols of our past identities. My college in Cambridge is Christ College, established in the 14th century. Christ College. Down the road there is Jesus College. Across the road there is Corpus Christi. Down the road furthest is Trinity. These are all Christian Catholic names. But they're no more Christian than the man in the moon. They have totally lost their Christian foundation. Why? For a whole range of reasons. They have lost the spirit of maintaining the radicality of their founding story. They drifted over the centuries. Well, I've seen institutions in the United States that have drifted far faster over centuries because of wrong decisions. Option number 3, ongoing refounding. This is simply the re-articulation and ownership of the founding story of healthcare. Not Mother Macaulay only, not John of God. The primary story is Jesus Christ. That alone will be the glue, the powerful emotional glue that will bridge our amalgamations and hold us together. And that's it's wonderful that we're actually there now. We're able to do that. But that means that trustees and boards and executives have to act boldly to develop appropriate formations based on the theology that I have referred to in that diagram of Catholic identities. Time is not on our side. If we do not assume ongoing responsibility for refounding with accompanying formation programs and the correct choice of personnel, our Catholic health and aged care services will be reduced merely to an historical memory. Voltaire, the Frenchman, did say some very good things sometimes. And one thing he did say was, nothing great is ever done without enthusiasm. Nothing great is ever done without enthusiasm and passion. Over these last 2 days, I feel enthusiasm and passion. It's wonderful, it's energizing. Now we have to move to the concrete. What are we going to do within 5 years? I may not be around in 5 years, but I'm still saying it. What are you going to do now in planning for this process whereby we base our Catholic health services and aged care services on the foundation of Jesus Christ? Nothing great is ever done without enthusiasm. You have it, let's use it.